Hey everybody, this is Mike from Cincy Digi. We are here with Ryan, who just got top 64 at the Digimon Nationals, with Green Gacha featuring Heavyleomon. So we're gonna jump right into the deck profile with him, if that's okay with you, Ryan.
Yeah, that's okay. And first off, I want to just, thank everyone that came up to me over the weekend. I got a lot of people that were excited to see the deck and see me pilot it. So it's one of my favorite deck archetypes. I know it's not meta relevant, but it puts in a good amount of work at locals, so I'm happy to share it. So what I'll also say about the deck list is it's a very streamlined deck. It runs basically all four ofs except for one card, and then just four of eggs. So I'm running the minimum amount of different cards that you can run. But this archetype is very customizable to whatever you're seeing at locals or whoever you want to play against. So there's about a 75-80% baseline for what you want to have in your gotcha list, and then the other 20% kind of depends on what your top end is. But we'll go ahead and get started. The eggs most people won't be surprised about are the four BT7 Coromons. When attacking, reveal the top card of your deck and then place it at the top or bottom. There are a few practical applications for this card. The first one, obviously, is it makes your top three gotcha search a top four. You just if you don't have the Tortamon underneath, you just reveal this. You use this first to see if you have a level six, and if you don't, you bottom deck it. There are other practical applications for this card, though, that help you with your consistency. So if you have a level six out and you have this in source and you swing with it again, you can use your raising area and keep it open and use this effect to search the top card of your deck. And if it's a card you need, like maybe your Tortomon, maybe your level five, if you're missing a second one, whatever it may be. Maybe you have another Torto and you see you're level six. You can use this to keep that on top of your deck. Otherwise, you can bomb deck it to try and find a different card. So I did that a lot to help with my consistency when I had the stack out. And what you'll see is a lot of my all my level sixes can swing multiple times. So even if I got you off the first swing, I'm able to use this to search, that same turn. So it's pretty good in that regard. I've seen some people use a fifth egg. I do run Mimi in the deck, but I don't like running the fifth egg because you really want to be as consistent as possible. And in my opinion, if you need to get to a fifth egg, you're probably going to lose anyway. The game's going on long enough as it is outside of like something like security control. So, four eggs are fine. You want to see this egg, it's perfect, and no issues with that. Going into the level threes, everyone who's played Gacha has seen this card before. If you haven't played Gacha, you probably don't remember what this card is, but tried and true BT1 Kakuamon. Very simple. If you're level six or higher on your turn, you get security detect +1. Um, I tell people this all the time, but this is kind of my litmus test card, if you will, to see how many people understand deck building because this card is just absolutely powerful in the right deck. Yeah, a lot of people get turned off by the one cost Evo, but what I always tell people, I tell people a few things. First off, the one cost of two Evo is just because of the inherent effect. There's only three level threes in the game right now that have security attack +1 as the inherited. It's this. It's the promo Sunarizamon that came in the Great Legends pack for BT4, and then also the Agumon for the Bond of Bravery deck. Those are the only three level threes that give Sec +1. Obviously, the Agumon Bond of Bravery, it's only unique to one card that you can use it for. And then the Sunarizamon, it came out a few sets after the Kukumon, and you have to be a black Digimon, had to be 13,000 DP or higher, which at the time only you could only use that for like Blastmon and the starter deck Blitzgraymon. So um, a little bit of power creep, and there was a little bit more of a condition on that. So like if you were to go into like Chaosmon back in the day, you wouldn't get the Sec +1 off that for Sunarizmon, but you would get it off Kukuamon. So I always tell people that don't be turned off by the one cost to Evo. Back in the day, it was a little bit of a detriment because if you were to play something like Lord Knight, if you were to Digivolve for one in raising and give them one, then they could just go level three Pitomon or Torimon and go into their level 5, or do that and go TK and then go into their Lore Knight and be set up. But with the way things have changed over time, with effects of like especially level 4s, you see a lot more 2 cost to Evo. So this Kakumon is actually pretty good at in the early game to help choke your opponent. So if you go turn 1, you can just Digivolve into this for 1 and pass turn. And a lot of times, typically, what your opponent will do is go for free into their level 3 and then go for 2 into their level 4 to choke you at 1, or maybe go into, play like a training boost to choke you to 1. And then on your turn, you can play your training boost or go into your level 4 and choke them back to 1. And so, just in the early game, with you going first, even though you only have 5 cards, you can play it a little bit slow, keep the memory management of your opponents to a minimum, and then draw a few extra cards to help with your consistency. And then, of course, with your first deck, then you have Sec +1 when you got into your level 6. So it's very good. The Inherit helps make the Gacha engine aggressive, especially if you have multiple swings. I was telling people, if you swing multiple times, this Inherit technically isn't Sec +1, it's Sec +2. So, you know, I just always tell people to look at the cards a little bit differently. Don't just look at, oh well, it's expensive to Evo. Well, there's a reason for that. It's from BT1 and it has a pretty good secure inherent effect. So just something for people to keep in mind. But this is a staple of Green Gacha to help with your aggression. The other staple of the Green Gacha engine is a new one that came out in BT14. It's the BT14 Kunamon. Pretty straightforward effect on play. You suspend this. You can suspend this Digimon and reveal the top 3 cards of your deck and add a green card to your hand. Bottom deck the rest. That is a green card. That's not a green Digimon. So I can add a training boost. I can add, my green tamer. I can add my green options. I can add whatever I want to my hand. And this is very good for consistency because before BT14, the only card that you could use in the deck to find your Gacha pieces were Green Men Boost. With this, it gives me another searcher to be able to search out, do a generic search of any card that I need. So there are plenty of times where I'll play this out and I'm trying to find my Ordomon, I'm trying to find my level 5, and I'll hit it. Or, there are other times where I'll play this and suspend and I won't hit it, but I'll get a training boost and I'll pick that up and then slam the training boost down and try and search again. So very good for the deck. I just feel like in general, if a deck's going to be successful, especially in this day and age, you probably need multiple searchers. However that may be, whether it's your tamer, option cards, or a Digimon to search, because it just helps with the consistency. And that's one of the big pieces that was lacking with the Green Gacha archetype was outside of Memboost, you really didn't have a good searcher for the deck, but this provides that. And it's also good early game too. So hypothetically, if I open with multiple rookies, I'll Digivolve and then play Kunamon and do a search, give him 3, but then I'll just do a chip swing the next turn and get him down to 4 security, and that really helps out the deck a lot too. So it's good for that. It's just really good in general to have on body search, so I can just Digivolve this in raising if I want, or play it out and search if I need to. It helps out with the deck space, because if I were to separate that out, it would be a little bit tight and you'd have to make some other sacrifices. So it's good that I have it on body. The other rookie, now these two are really the staples of Green Gacha. The other card is really a flex option depending on what you want to do with the deck and really what your top end is. So when I was building this, I was building it specifically for Nats. And one of the things I wanted to do is one of the things I noticed specifically with my top end is there weren't a lot of level 3s that had synergy with my top end, especially because both level 6s aren't like the same uh, I guess type. So the bottom end didn't make a lot of sense from the level 3 perspective. But what I did want to do is I wanted to have it be a little bit defensive, especially with certain matchups that can spam the board or do multiple swings against me as well. So I ended up going with a new addition that I hadn't tested out with the deck before, and that's the Security Pulsemon. Very simple, out of security, suspend a Digimon, and then this card gets added to the hand. Uh, Really helpful again against board spam, against stuff that restands multiple times. Typically, you'll tap this down and you'll be able to stop their attacks. I know it helped save me in like the Fenrir-Lugamon matchup to prevent them from swinging multiple times with their combo. Helps against like stuff like Mirage, helps against stuff like Melga, just to tap them down, make them forced to unsuspend in a different way, saves you a swing. So very clutch. I found with my matchups today. Very happy with it. The other thing that's nice about it too is this is a turbo deck. After you set up for a few turns and get your Mimi out, you're really trying to build multiple stacks as fast as possible. So one of the things that I found too is the security effect of adding to hand is very nice because sometimes you just won't have a second rookie to go into, but they hit this, it goes to hand, then hey, I have a rookie to go and raise the next turn. And sometimes I'll be at like two memory, for example, and I'll say, well, when I tap my Mimi, I want to go Kukuamon to go down to one and then go into my level four, play a training boost. And sometimes I'll be at like one memory and I'll go Pulsemon into my level four. So, you know, the different the difference between the Evo costs actually comes into play a little bit with your decision. And sometimes the Kukuamon, you don't want the one cost. Sometimes you do. Sometimes you just want to go for cheap. And sometimes you just need a rookie, and that security effect helps out with that. So it has a few niche uses outside of just the security effect for this deck because I am turboing out with Mimi. So I really liked it in this deck, and it helped with a lot of my matches for defensive purposes. But that's it for the level threes. I will go over a few tech cards that I did consider. Again, like I said, there weren't any great inherits that synergize with both level sixes I'm running, but you could just tech floodgates in this deck, the Terriermon or the Pomu. Again, I didn't really see the need for Terriermon because whatever memory gain there might be with like a matchup like Mirage, for example, they can just bounce this pretty easily. It's irrelevant. And then like the Pomumon can't play by effects. This deck actually is pretty good into stuff like Anubis. Um, so I didn't really feel the need for it. And then also it can also impact your deck as well because we do have two Digimon that play by effects in this deck. So the last thing I wanted to do was have this out and have that be impacted in any way. So, but if you wanted to include tech options against certain decks, those are certainly available. There really isn't like any inherent inherent effect that I was missing in the deck. There are other stuff like the Searcher Agumon for a Tamer you can run if you want DP, but again, you're only looking for specifically one Mimi most of the time, so it's not really that important, and we run it enough to where we see it often enough. So I didn't really feel the need for it. I just felt, hey, have your aggression, have your search, and then have your security defense, and that was good enough for me. Going into the level fours, though, no surprise what the first level four is. It's a mandatory four of, and it's really the card that makes the deck work, and that's the Tortamon. So when attacking, I may reveal a green Digimon card and place that at the top of my deck, which will guarantee my Gacha, but it also gives me plus 3,000 DP for the turn if I do that. If I do that, so rigging the Gacha engine, you want to see that card. If you don't see that card, then you are risking your swings. But more often than not, if I don't see this, I am seeing it on the second go around. So I do see it consistently enough, at least with one of my stacks, that I am getting into a big enough body more times than not. So and again, with something like Kunamon where I can search it out directly, that also helps out a lot too. Um, but yeah, I think more times than not, I'm only going to do the win attacking once. But there are some situations with one of my level sixes where I might want to do it two times. And the other thing I'll say too about the Tortamon is it's also good for your second stack. because there were so many times during the tournament where I would gotcha into my level six with my first stack, and then I would promote a second stack that didn't have the Tortamon, and I could just swing with my first stack, put something on top, and then at my level five I would swing and hit into the level six that I put on top with the first stack Tortamon. So uh, if you see one and it lives, you're doing well, and you know, it's a very good piece for the deck. The second level six I decided to run is also really a staple of the archetype right now, at least in my opinion, and that's going to be Force Nemon. Same thing as Pulsemon. Out of security, it's going to suspend a Digimon. The difference is Pulsemon goes to hand. Sneemon will play out and on play it will suspend the Digimon. So this was one of the Pomu uh, one of the Digimon that play by effect with that you could block with Pomon. I'm running it at 4. I think that depending on what your top end is and what other supplemental level 4s you have, you could potentially cut this to 3, 2, depending on what you want to run. But like I said, I was going for max security defense in this deck, given what I was expecting at Nats. So 4 was mandatory of. It came up a lot in my tournament, just in certain matchups, just being able to play out a body. And I mean, the other thing too is if it comes out, not only am I suspending a Digimon, but it gives me a potential buy to go into a level 5 on the next turn and then do another gotcha, you know, spin. So um, it's very easy to set up now, given how I built the deck, and so they really have to honor this card. And it's a very threatening card just defensively and then potentially offensively as well. So I like it. If you have another inherent you like, you can always cut this, but I think you should at least run a few Sneemons in your deck just for defensive purposes. You used to run the starter deck Kabuterimon that was blocker, but obviously with how much on body removal there is nowadays, and the lack of, I guess I should say, like it's hard to get into a blocker nowadays, especially one that's 5K, because you have to play down a level 3 and then digivolve it. That's way too much work. Whereas something like Sneemon, if it's in security, great, it'll come out, it'll do what it's supposed to do, and then if it's in my hand, well, I'm evoing for 2 and I have no inherit, but that's also fine too, because really the power of the deck is going to be from the level sixes anyway, so it's also fine. And most evolutions in other decks nowadays are 2 cost too, so you're not really losing anything off that now. So I tested it out in Grandis back in the day, my Gotcha Grandis deck, and people were even running it in standard Grandis as well. It does a good job for what you want to do with the deck. So I really like that card. It's a staple for me. I run it at 4. I'd at least suggest running it minimum of 2. But finally, the last card in the deck that I run is going to be a new one, 2 of the promo Kuwagamon that came out this past set. So on play, when digivolving, one of your opponent's Digimon or Tamers can't unsuspend until the end of their turn. I'll tell you what, this card actually saved me in a few of my matchups. I know I used it to close out my Melga matchup. I used it to close out my Bloomlord matchup. Uh, that effect is just very, very good. I mean, just if you have like a big body that you just can't deal with, and you just need a turn, this card helps you with that. The fact that it's on play or when digivolving is really nice, and it's a 4-drop too. So I mean, if you're at 1 or 0 memory, dropping this for 4 just to put them to 3 or 4 and stop their big body from swinging. I mean, that's just very efficient and cheap. And then also the your turn inherent. This Digimon gets plus 2,000 DP. Very generic blanket DP inherent boost. So um, we're not running any DP boosts on the level 3. Sometimes you do, but just another nice pairing with the Tortamon. I normally like to have my level 4 inherits be DP boosts. So being able to have that is just all around. It's a nice card. It's another defensive card like Pulsemon and Steamon with the on play with the evolving effect. So as you can see, this deck's going to be very offensive, but it has defensive elements to it that can help you win the matchup. But that's it for the level fours. I run 10. The only other level four that I considered for the deck was the BT14 Leomon. And I'll tell you what, I absolutely hate this card. I tried to make this card work so much in this deck, and I absolutely hate it. But if you don't know what this does, when attacking, if you're attacking a Digimon with higher DP, you can warp into a level 6 Leomon in name for a cost of 6 and ignore the Digivolution requirements. And then on your turn inherent, if it has Leomon in name, you get plus 2000 DP. This when attacking effect just never came up in my testing. Every single time I would have this in raising or be able to get into it from raising and swing at something. The only thing they had to spin was like a level 3 searcher that they poked at my security and lived, or maybe they would have like a War Gray or Black War Greymon that has reboot that is not suspended anymore, or it could be they might have something suspended that has like retaliation or something that I didn't want to swing at anyway. So uh, the when attacking effect is very useless. Even if you had a practical application for it, the cost is just way too expensive. 6 is way too much for this effect, in my opinion. I mean, you look at like Guilmon and Vmon from the old Force and Galamon starter decks, they can warp into a level 6 for a cost of 4 if your opponent has a Mega out. I mean, that's cheaper and it's at a lower level and it has more practical applications. I just think this when attacking effect is just poorly designed in my opinion. At the very least, they should have made it a lot cheaper. But maybe made the condition a little bit different. I get why they made it like that because it synergizes with the BT14 Saber Leo, but you know that's just not good effect at all because a lot of times you'll best case scenario, you might be at 3 and swing with this and put your opponent to 3 and do the combo, but then you can't do anything else for the turn. Then if you're at 1 or 0, then you're giving them 5 or 6 memory, and that's just way too much, especially if they have like a boost out. So forget it. And then your turn inherent, if you have Leomon in name, you get plus 2000 DP. So this is good for the top end I'm running, but it's worse than Quagamon's inherent because Quagamon gives all my Digimon regardless plus 2000 DP, whereas this is only giving it to Leomon in name. So for my Gacha level 5s, I'm not going to get a boost off this, whereas with Quagamon, I will get a boost. Well, the Quagamon will give my Mammy Tyra 7k and my Jagamon 9k, so it'll help my Mammy Tyra clear level 4s if it whiffs, and Jagamon most level 5s if it whiffs. So it's just a better inherent, and Quagamon's just a better defensive card for the deck. And the Leomon when attacking just won't come up at all. So that's why I decided to go with the Quagamon over the Leomon. As far as the level 5s go, I mean, you know what they are, or the Jagamon, or the Mammotyramon, the Gacha engine for the level 5s. Not a ton to explain here. They both do the same thing when attacking. Reveal top 3 cards of your deck, go into a green level 6 without paying the cost, bomb deck the rest. The only difference is Jagamon has more DP, and Mammy Tyra can be dropped for a play cost of 5 if you brick, which I did end up doing a few games during the Nationals tournament over the weekend. So not a lot to go over there. You want to pair these with Tortomon, obviously, but sometimes you just have to risk it and do a top 4 search with pairing with the Coromon. But that's the engine. Not a ton to go over there. But getting into the level 6s, what I will say is the best Gacha level 6s you can run are really anything with a really strong when digivolving, end of attack, your turn effect. Obviously, you can't do when attacking effect. You can't get when attacking effects with your level 6s because when attacking effects trigger when you swing. So you're only going to get your when attacking effects for your level 5, obviously, and then anything lower than that. So it really kind of depends on the level 6 whether it's going to be good or not. And also, a lot of times with the Gacha deck, the best Gacha cards are ones where they can hold their own with just themselves being a single stack. Whereas something like, say, Bloom Lord or Hydramon, for example, you really want a wide board to get value off their when digivolving in your turn effects. So it kind of just varies what level 6s are going to be good for the deck or not. But I decided to go with 4 of the Heavyleomons from EX05. And this card's an absolute beast. It has Fortitude, so finally we have a green level 6 with protection. Yeah, green not having protection really had set back a little bit. You had to rely on being wide enough or being fast enough in certain cases to withstand certain decks. But you finally have a card with protection, so that's good. So got the Fortitude. Then it does have a when Digivolving on deletion of D-Digivolve 1, and then bomb deck a 6k or less. So D-Digivolve in a green deck, that's pretty strong. Bomb decking a 6k or less, that does come up a lot. Whether it's a level 4 or even in like maybe the Anubis matchup level 5s with their Blue Marimon or their Maycrack mode. And then end of attack, I bomb deck another 4K, and if I don't bomb deck anything, I get to unsuspend. So kind of going back to my original point of like Kakuamon, for example, you know, having a level 6 that restands is, I think, one of the strongest abilities you can have in this deck. Just being able to get out multiple swings and then obviously have some removal with even with just the wind digivolving, and then you could potentially like swing over a body with a plus 3k boost. There were a lot of games where I was swinging 16k for 2 checks with Kakuamon and Tortamon, and then restanding because they didn't have anything to bomb deck. So doing 16k 4 checks and then saying, yeah, I have Fortitude, try and get rid of me. Yeah, I might have a stack and racing being able to promote too. That's very hard for the opponent to handle. Um, Again, good removal, can restand, uh, all very good stuff for the deck. I decided to pair it with 4 of the Saberleomon from BT14. A lot of people are surprised by this card. I think it's pretty good in certain situations. I thought it was better in BT14 than like EX5 right now because you have like Anubis with retail blockers. You just have other faster bodies, but it's still good at what it does and what I want to do with the deck. So when digivolving, by unsuspending this Digimon, suspend one of your opponent's Digimon, and then end of your turn, this Digimon may attack your opponent's Digimon. So for the when digivolving, it's a by X do Y effect. So I get the unsuspend. So this is a little bit interesting. Like I get the unsuspend regardless, but I have to unsuspend to suspend a Digimon. But really, I'm using the when digivolving to unsuspend more times than not. Normally, it's the other way around, like with Rosemon, where you have to suspend to unsuspend. But this way, even if my opponent doesn't have any bodies on board, I'm able to restand and get a second swing off. So that's good. And then it also has piercing. So kind of like with Heavyleomon can remove with its when digivolving on deletion end of attack effect, whereas Saberleo can just beat over something with piercing. And so, being able to clear a body or two and check some security at the same time, pretty strong. And again, being able to pair with like Tortamon and Kakuamon, kill a body, dupe, and be at 15k for 2 checks with piercing is pretty good for the deck. But that's it for all the Digimon. Let me see. I did consider some other level sixes to pair. I was always going to do it with Heavyleomon, but my second level 6 that I ended up on, I did consider a few other choices. So the first one was Grandis. Grandis very strong with Gacha, being 16k, potentially 19 or 18k on my turn. Outside of like maybe War Greymon with BT9 Malgray X, that's going to be very hard to not withstand for my opponent. But the thing with Grandis is, like I said, for aggressive purposes, I wanted to be able to restand multiple times. And for it to do that with its end of attack effect, you either need the XNA option or Grand Quagamon. And obviously, I wasn't going to run Grand Quagamon with Heavy Leo and Grandis. That's just way too many megas. You used to run like 10 or 11 megas back in the day before Tortamon, but with Tortamon being able to guarantee a good amount of your gachas, you can run 7 or 8 level 6s typically, and find that's pretty consistent. So really, without Grand Quagmon, you'd have to run the X Antibody option, which I did consider for the deck because it would have practical applications for pairing with Grandis just to tuck to get the end of attack, or even just to, if you whiff your Gacha, you can go into it from hand for 4. And then also the X-Anti with Heavyleomon, but I just figured that I really valued the restand in this meta just to be faster. So with Saber Leo, I can get the restand, no questions asked. Whereas with Grandis, I would need to have the X-Anti in hand. So it's another card that I would need to be able to pull off that combo. And sometimes I wouldn't even need the X-Anti for Heavy Leo because my opponent wouldn't be able to clear it. So it, I felt like if I were to do that, it would be a little bit too cute. It would still be a good option to pair it with. Again, I valued the guaranteed restand more than anything, so that's why I went with Saber over it. But then the other card I did consider for the deck was Leomon from EX05. So being able to play it for cheap in the mid to late game, I thought was going to be useful. Also the effect to next something 4K and give it sec -1. That's another good defensive piece potentially for the deck. But again, I really valued offense for this deck, and I don't know if I would call it passive defense, but I think you get what I'm saying, where like Heavy Leo can be offensive and do some board removal. Saber can be offensive and get board removal, whereas Bancho really can't do that. If you were to gotcha into Bancho Leo, he could be, 12, 14, 15K, but he's only doing one check. And he doesn't have protection. Uh, except for maybe like getting swung over and DP reducing that body just and killing it off. So they'd have to be like 16K or higher to get rid of it. But it can be digivolved. It can be removed hard or by other removals. So I mean, and then the other thing too is like a lot of times when I was testing, I was playing this out or wanting to play this out when I had 0 or 1 memory. So kind of the same thing with just a few of my other cards where I didn't want to give my opponent 5, 6, 7 memory to do something. A lot of times they should be able to answer that. So, you know, best case scenario with my deck, I would be at 3 memory and play this down for 7 to put them at 4. And even at that point, they could probably still do something with it. So I just felt like it was not aggressive enough. And then the defensive utility it had was already covered by something like Quagamon, Pulsemon, or Sneemon, or, my options that I'm running as well. So I decided to go against it. I tested it at 2 again. I had also tested it at 1, and I just ended up cutting it entirely. I was running it for like the blue matchups like Melga and Mirage that just do a bunch of swings and restand multiple times, but only for 1 security check. But Melga can delete it with the when attacking effects of Ace and bounce it with Melga X. And then like Mirage can bounce it with Pseudo Ace because it has no sources, and then it can bounce it with Burst Mode as well. So, your opponent can play around it, and you might only save a swing. It just wasn't worth it, in my opinion. So I decided to keep it offensive with Heavy Leo and Saber that can have defensive applications, but also just be offensive. As far as the level 7s go, typically your green level 7s are either Quartzmon or Rosemon Burst Mode. A lot of people were surprised that I wasn't running Quartzmon, but the reason why I didn't run Quartzmon is because, Heavy Leo and Saber are supposed to be clearing bodies off the field, so and you're realistically only going to have 1 tamer out and maybe 1 stack more times than not through the turn, so you're not going to get a lot of value off the Quartzmon to for the memory game purposes. And even if your opponent has a wide board, then you're probably not you probably either bricked or have lost a few tempos with trying to search or trying to gotcha into your pieces. So you know I figured no point in doing that, especially trying to keep the deck as lean and as quick as possible. And then again, at the same time, with Quartzmon, do you really want to digivolve on Heavy Leo? Because if you do, you lose your Indomitable or your Fortitude. So um, didn't feel like it was worth it. Kind of the same thing with Burst Mode. It's expensive. It can, help stun a few things on your opponent's side of the field, but more times than not, you'd only want to go into it off Saber, and you're prioritizing the Heavy Leo anyway. So uh, if you're gotchaing with Tortomon and have both, you're going into Heavy Leo more times than not. So And Heavy Leo does a good job anyway. Even if there's like a big level 7 or 6 on the field, between Tordo and like Heavyleomon's Digivolve that can take care of that. Even Saber with Tordo can take care of that as well. So just didn't feel like it was necessary for the deck because you just don't get enough value off of it because my level 6s are supposed to clear the field anyway. As far as the Tamers go, run 4 of the Memory Setter Mimi. This is really the engine of the deck. Obviously a Memory Setter, but then also tapping it to hatch it, get an extra raising phase when I have a level 5 or higher out. So kind of the idea with the deck is you'll set up with your level 4. It doesn't even matter which one it is, but then you'll want to prioritize the Mimi so that you play it out with your level 4. And then the next turn you promote your level 4 or even your level 5, depending on what the board state is. Go into your level 5, tap Mimi, hatch another egg, and then do your gotcha effect to see if you hit. And then, regardless of what happens, you just start building your other stack. So that's why I run it at 4. Typically, with the older gotcha lists, you might see a 2-2 split of the Memory Center Mimi and Izzy and Mimi, but I just felt like for this deck, I wanted to prioritize speed and tempo, and Mimi's the tempo piece for the deck, being able to bring out your gotcha piece and then start a new one right away while also getting into your level 6 potentially off the first stack. So that's very hard for the opponent to handle if you have a level 6 out and then have another one raising to promote next turn and then tap Mimi again and start another one. A lot of people's decks can handle one stack, but bringing out a potential level 6 each turn is very oppressive for the opponent to handle. That's why I decided up that count to 4 because I do want to see it. I don't want to have it missing from my hand or missing from security. So that's why I run it at 4 to see it as much as possible. But as far as like other tamers go, I only consider 2. Obviously, the Izzy and Mimi. I did consider because it has been a standard for gotcha decks in the past. But the thing that I don't like about this card as much as I used to is just it's very hard to play. It's a 4 cost to play, so finding time, especially with how fast a lot of decks are nowadays, that's really tough. And it's also just very easy to play around, whether it's just stuff dying or just waiting for the perfect opportunity to combo off on you. You know, just dropping this for 4, your opponent's able to play around the memory gain from potentially having a suspend Digimon in play. And then the other effect just being the same as like the gotcha level 5s. Again, if you have Tortamon stack, you're not using this because in theory you should have your level 6 as well. So really it would only come up to help with your consistency on not having Tortamon stack. But more times than not, you are trying to prioritize the Tortamon. And then there are just other times where you'll swing with your level 5 and you'll hit on the level 5 swing and you won't need this anyway. So this would really only come up if you don't have Tortamon and you miss on your level 5 swing, which obviously does happen, but for 4 memory, just trying to help with that consistency, I just didn't feel like it was worth it. But the other card that I did consider was Analog Man, just as a funny tech, because Heavyleomon is a machine Digimon, so it's kind of like Machine Dramon or Chaos Dramon in a way where you could kind of use this as a little bit of a defensive tech to redirect to your Heavyleomon. And, even if you're suspended or if you just want to die again on deletion off and then bring it back, you could play around with that. I decided this was a little bit too cheeky to run. Maybe if you were to run like a fun gotcha deck with like Heavyleomon and either Black Mega Gargamon or just Mega Gargamon in general, they're both machines. So if you wanted to add some defense to the deck with Heavy Leo, you can just try this out a little bit. But I thought that was being a little bit too cute. I think the other defensive options are just more consistent and have a little bit better utility for the deck. Only 8 cards left. four options for these two. Got four agility training. So I told you that I used to use the green memory boosts back in the day. I think the agility trainings are a lot better. I mean, just for obvious reasons, right? Because it's kind of the same thing as like Cool Boy, for example. You know, being a two drop is very good at if your opponent has like a memory setter and you're at two memory, you're able to drop this and do another play. Whereas with the green mem boost, you weren't able to do that. You're only doing a top two search as well, but you're able to grab any green cards. So kind of going back to what I said earlier, pairing this with Kunamon, I wanted to have two searchers in the deck, and both my searchers can grab any green card. So there are plenty of games where I'll agility train and I won't see the piece I want, but I'll see another agility training. You can't do that with Green Mem Boost, but you can with this. So, agility training up twice if you need to is pretty good. The other thing too that I like about this over the Green Mem Boost as well is it's only a top two search, whereas Green Mem Boost is top four, and a lot of people might be confused by that because once you want to have a deeper search, and honestly, I don't really want to because what I was finding is the more I was searching, the more level sixes I was bottom decking, and at that point, then it's just affecting my potential gotcha plays. Like sometimes I'll boost up, and then between that and then me digivolving up to my 4 or 5, then I have drawn or lost a few megas, and I might not have Tortamon in the stack for the level 6 I did draw. And then at that point, then I'm just thinking to myself, well, probability wise isn't very good for me to hit on this swing. So I don't really like to bomb deck a ton of cards in this deck. I just want to search when I need to search. So running two searches is perfect, and the fact that they can pick up any card that I need is perfect as well. But then the last cards in the deck, uh, I decided to add more removal, and I went with Grandel Soul. So if I have two suspended Digimon, it reduces the cost by two. That happened, I think, once or twice, specifically in the Bloom matchup with Quartzmon out. But suspend one of your opponent's Digimon, and then bottom deck one of your opponent's suspended Digimon. So I decided to go with this because I wanted reliable removal for a lot, specifically for the blue matchups like Melga and Mirage, but really just any reliable removal for any big threats that are swinging at me. There are other removal options that, um, like Flashy Boss Punch and Heaven's Judgment, that people typically run in like the traditional Heavyleomon decks. But my main concern with that is that the security effect wasn't strong enough. Just being able to DP reduce by 12,000 DP, that if you were to go up against something like Mirage, for example, between the boost they could have from the Windage Evolving effect of Mock Galgamon or the Inherent of Galgamon, all turns if you have eight or more cards plus 1,000 DP, or just being at like burst mode, for example, 15k DP at least. If they were to hit something like that in security, they'll be down to a few thousand DP, but they'll still have jamming with the Bukamon egg, and they'll still swing out. So I wanted something that if one of those bodies hits my option, that it'll just get rid of it. Um, Even for something like Leviamon, for example, that's 13k that swings at this. It would live those other removal options, but it'll be getting rid of with this. Now there are some situations where you'd rather DP reduce like in the Greymon matchups, but if they have like Melgray, the BT11 Melgray X, they can't be DP reduced, and sometimes they'll be at a big enough DP where it won't even matter if they hit, or maybe they'll hit like with blast security anyway. So I just decided, for certain matchups that are like single stack green decks are very bad into traditional blue decks. So I wanted to make sure I had an option that would punish those decks for, trying to swing out on me with just one stack. So that's it for the options. Obviously, there were a few tech options that I considered. Again, Green Mem Boost. If I feel like 4 agility training is enough. Some people want to run uh, more than 4 boosts. So if you want to run, Green Mem Boost, I think it's fine. It's just really a preference. Um, there were matches I had where I needed to dig a little bit more. Um, but again, I wanted to max out on my security defense with Pulsemon, Sneemon, and Grandelsol. So, after that, space is pretty tight, obviously. So it's really just a preference, honestly, as far as, you know, what if you want to run options like this for removal or if you want to run more search. It's really up to you. But I felt like four boosts and then the four Kumon was enough search more games than not. And then of course I think the agility training is just a little bit better, honestly. I did consider X Antibody. Uh, has had applications with Leomon for when it returns with Fortitude. You can tuck it underneath and have it return with Fortitude again. But I also felt that unless I was running something like Grandis with Heavy Leo, there wasn't really any. It wasn't really like a good card to run because I can't pair it with Saber, honestly. So if it wasn't a good card for both my level success, I didn't really want to consider it because it's just a little bit too techy. Um, flashy boss punch. Again, I kind of covered it with Grandel Soul. The effect's pretty good, but it just doesn't. The DP reduction is just not enough for insecurity. And again, both Grandel Soul and Flashy Boss Punch both suspend, so it's really coming down to one's bomb decking, one's giving neg 12 DP. Um, the ability for a Leomon to attack afterwards, I think I did it once in my testing just to swing for game, but it's very niche. At least I think so. So a lot of times you can just swing before using a removal option anyway. So um, and also with this deck specifically, I can only really use it when I have one of my level sixes out. Whereas with Grandel Soul, I can use it whenever I have a green source out because you need to have a Leomon name because there's no yellow source within this deck. So there was some testing that I did where I might like be up against a Mirage, and I don't have a stack in raising to promote, and I need an extra turn where I can Grandel Soul it and give myself a turn to win that game, whereas I can't do it with this. So that's really the reason why I chose not to go with this. Um, I still think it's a good card, but for what I wanted to do, I just thought Randall Soul is better and more consistent. I did consider Blooming of Sincerity because I am running for Mimis. What this card does is I get to suspend one of your Digimon, and then if I have a Mimi in play, one of your Digimon, or is it that Digimon? Yeah, one of your opponent's Digimon doesn't unsuspend till the end of their turn. So it's kind of like another stun card like Kuwagamon. Again, the reason why I decided not to go with this though is it's really dependent on you having Mimi out. And there were just some games, even though I'm running it as a 4 of and I prioritize getting it out in all my matches, there were just some times where you don't see it. And then, if you don't see it, then, a 3 cost to suspend is just not worth it at all. So, I just wanted something where you know, I can play it whenever I want, and it's a stronger effect just to get rid of the body too. Whereas just keeping it suspended, they can if you can't deal with it, then it's just not going to help you. You're just buying a turn for no reason. So that's why I didn't go with this. But then the final card that I considered was Final Zugon Punch. Obviously for heavy Leo, but giving it an extra security attack, blocker, and reboot, that's pretty good. Um, the reason why I didn't go with this though is because it doesn't pair with the saber, and then also sometimes off like your gotcha, for example, if you're like promoting your level 4 and you're going into like your level 5, you're not going to have enough memory on the next swing to be able to do this. So you're really only able to use this card if you have Heavy Leo out and you have the memory. Whereas I'm really prioritizing the memory to build up my second stack, so it kind of conflicts with that. Still a good defensive tool. I think it's fine to run up as a one of like even in Tribal Leo, or you can even try it out in this deck. But again, I just prioritize just the security option removal for the deck. Above this and trying to turbo out enough stacks as possible. So uh, but that's really what the deck profile is. As far as my matchups go, I finished 8-2 day one of Swiss, getting 32nd place. So My matchups were I had a 2 round bye, so yeah, I mean the guy who brought Green Gotcha to the Nationals actually top cut a few tournaments online. So I did have a 2 round bye, but my third round was black or gray. I ended up losing that game. Both games I didn't see Mimi. Well, I saw Mimi in security, but it was trashed off Melgray, so I couldn't turbo out my stacks. I got him down to 0 and 1 security both games, but without having that extra tempo from Mimi, that cost me that match. My fourth round match was Heavyleomon. I ended up winning that match. Back and forth all 3 games. All 3 games, I was able to stop the Fenry combo with either Pulsemon or Sneemon, suspending their Fenry off like their warp effect from Balmon. So they would restand off the Soul Luger inherit when they played stuff out with Fenry's Alliance. And I would just tap him down with Pulse or Sneemon so that he couldn't do the wind attacking effect to restand again and delete a body and do basically, 4 more checks and swing out. I think he also hit Grand Soul in one of those games as well. He took one game because he was able to combo off even with like Pulse and Sneemon and Chimeramon for game after I tapped his Black Godamon. But I was able to take 2 of the 3. My security was pretty good both those games that I won. My fifth round match was basically Anubis Leviamon. I ended up winning that 2-0. Again, Anubis is a pretty favorable matchup for Heavyleomon, even the Gacha variant, as long as I see Heavyleomon and can get into Heavyleomon. So that matchup wasn't really a problem at all. My next matchup was the sixth round was Melga. Uh, I won that as well. That was a pretty close matchup. Game 3, I think I mentioned it. They had their Melga X, and I was able to play out my Quagamon to keep it from restanding and potentially doing a swing blitz on the Omnimon X for game shenanigans. So Quagamon really helped me out there. Seventh round was Bloom Lord. Ended up that was a close game too. Game 1 I ended up bricking though. I had to play Mammy Tyra for 5 and give him a bunch of memory, but second and third game I was able to pull it out. The third game, kind of the same thing. I had Heavy Leo and Saber Leo suspended, and he had Quartzmon out, so I wasn't able to restand. I was trying to build another stack to swing for game, and I ended up digivolving into Quagamon once to stun, keep the Quartzmon from restanding, and then I was able to hard play my other copy to keep it from restanding for a second turn. And then he was trying to fight back with Lilymon Ace to bomb deck the Quagamon, and I ended up actually Grandel Souling the Lilymon Ace, which cost 6 because I had 2 suspended level 6s, and then the overflow from the Lilymon Ace made this basically a 3 cost removal, just to try and keep him from having enough suspended bodies to swing for game, because I was at 2 security, and I think there were 8 combined Digimon or Tamers at the time. So just trying to prevent that and stave off a few turns, and I was able to do that because he couldn't find his Cherrymon to prevent my swing. I think I had another Heavyleomon in hand that I could have DD it with, but you know, I was able to defensively save a few turns and pull it out when he had 0 security. My eighth round matchup was against Wargray. I won that one as well. Uh, kind of similar to Black Wargray, a little bit as far as some of the cards that they were running, but obviously they were running a little bit more of like the Raid Wargray and the BT9 Malgray X instead of the BT11 version. But just was able to get into the Heavy Leo and do 4 checks, get into Heavy and Saber to do 4 checks at 15-16K with Tordo. I mean that plus another stack and raising came in pretty clutch. I believe if I remember correctly, um, I think at least one of the games, it might have even been 2. He was at my opponent was at 0 security, and he had the BT12 tie out to give the Raid Wargray blocker. So I ended up gotchaing into Saber Leo to tap the Wargray to restand and take his last security and then swing for game. So Saberleo actually came up pretty clutch in that matchup to win one of the games and seal me the match. Ninth round was against Anubis. I ended up losing this, and it was actually friendly fire. It was against, my friend Kyle from the community that's placed 11th at Nats. So he had played. He had seen this deck in testing the night before, and he had played against it. He knew what my whole list was, so I think I had a competitive advantage against most people in the matchups across the entire tournament. But he was the one person that knew what my cards did and knew what the deck could do. So he was prepared for it. He knew what to how to stop some of the tricks that this deck can play. So I did beat him game one in 4 minutes, and then game two I was bricked up on a level 5 and 3. I think I had 6 level 6s in hand, 2 or 3 Grandel Souls, and then like a Kuwagamon and a Sneemon. I just, I had like 12 cards in hand, and I was missing 2 pieces, which was pretty unlucky. But he played well against it. Sometimes that just happens, but you know, he won that. But otherwise, like Anubis just doesn't threaten me. He turned to Anubis that first game, and I just didn't care because I just went to Heavy Leo, got rid of basically everything, and then had another stack to promote next turn. Whereas he had nothing, and he had used his boost already. Or he had used his boost already that he had laid the first turn to combo off into Anubis Merva. So you know if I see my pieces, it just it works out for me. But yeah, the tenth round game was against Royal Knights. That was to get me to top 32, and I ended up winning that 2-0. It was I ended up I was a little bit bricked up on game one. I I think I needed to use. I don't remember it exactly, but I think I might have like whiffed a gotcha and then was trying to hit my level 6, but eventually I did hit it, and I think I had the Kukulamon stack, so I was able to just take out all of his security. And then yeah, game two, he didn't draw that well, but I had full combo. I had Kukua, Tordo, and Heavy Leo, and 4 check 16k into Royal Knights. They don't run unless they're teching like X program or Wonkiati stock dough. They're not really teching for that stuff. They're probably running Crimson Blaze and other stuff for like Anubis and like you know other widespread decks. So 16 4 checks is basically jamming, and then I have Fortitude. Unless you're able to Genku Wolf Force combo me, you're not going to get rid of this. And then I had the Mimi out and another Jagamon and Raising, so it was basically GG's after three turns, even though he wasn't drawing too well. But those were my matchups going 8 and 2. Day two, I for top 64, I got paired with another Anubis player, and game one, I honestly, I think it was because I was tired and I had only had like 4 hours of sleep, the combined from Friday night and Saturday. But I misplayed that game pretty hard. He had like I got him down to 1 security, and he put me at 8 with Leviamon, and I think he had Lady Debbie out. Well, he had Anubismon out and played Leviamon off of the Anubismon to get rid of my Heavy Leo, and then I Fortitude and brought back the Heavy Leo to de-digivolve it back down to Lady Debbie. Um, I just got too aggressive with it. I should have just hard digivolved into another Heavy Leo and de-digivolved the Lady Debbie and bottom decked it, because against this deck Leviamon I don't really care about. It's just the Anubis and then the board spam that it could bring with, and then like just bringing like some blockers with Mervamon and trying to handle all that after the fact can be a little bit rough if I'm not proactive with it. So I ended up misplaying that. And then game two, I just bricked on a level 5. I think I think I played a training and that was it. I spent a few turns digivolving up to my 3 and 4, and played a Mimi, and I was just like, well, that's how it goes. Sometime didn't see the 5. So yeah, that game was recorded, so it'll probably be uploaded soon. It's not a really great match of what the deck can do, but my security was cracked both those games, and I could see my opponent was squirming a little bit trying to figure it out. I think he had lethal he had guaranteed lethal game two, and he almost digivolved into Lady Deving into another Anubis just because he was so scared of Grandal Soul and Pulsemon and Sneemon coming out and stopping his swings. So that was kind of funny to see how some people react to the deck. But yeah, I mean overall, outside of my friend who has seen me play this deck a lot, nobody really knew what this archetype was, or even prepped for it, or remembered like what Kukuamon's inherit was, or what Sneemon and Pulsemon do, or anything like that. So uh, a lot of people were asking me questions on what my cards did, and I would obviously tell them, but I definitely had like a competitive advantage of knowing what the line plays are with the deck compared to, you know, what my opponents just had prepped for Nats. So I don't know if that'll be something that will continue moving forward, but I definitely felt like I won some games just with the element of surprise with this deck. Uh, but yeah, that's really I think all I have to say about the deck profile. Again, I'll just show you a few combos that I did, just to kind of like highlight what I would try to do with the deck.
While you're getting that set up, were there any matchups that you didn't want to see going into Nats? Any bad ones for you?
So like Anubis is pretty good just because of like the removal and just the protection I have. Like blues generally, again, I think I mentioned this, but blues generally bad, but with like Randall Soul and just my security bombs, in testing it was like a 60-40 matchup for me, which is pretty high. Um, Red Hybrid and D Brigade I didn't play. I felt those were 50-50, just because it's just a matter of who's faster, and I mean there's kind of like an element of luck with it, because if they hit on their D Brigade on deletions, or if they hit on their on deletions from like their Flame on inherits, they can really chip away pretty fast. They don't care about like the Pulsemon and the Sneemon as much. So, you know, if I have to waste a turn trying to like find my Mimi, or if I don't see my Mimi, or if I don't see my like level 5 and have to do like waste an agility training on it, that can be an issue. But I mean, it's 50-50 in general in those matchups. Davis is a little bit rougher for this deck versus the tribal version, just because I feel like with like Loader Leo and the yellow level threes and fours, the DP reduction that you get off the on play and on deletion can help you take out some of the the level 5 Devas to help clean up the board a little bit better. Uh, but in general, as far as like all the decks that topped and that I saw, there wasn't really any deck where I said, "Yeah, I'm screwed. This is a horrible matchup." You know, this deck is pretty fast. It's good enough to where it'll at least be able to compete. And then again, even if you have a terrible matchup, they can always brick. So there wasn't like a single matchup where I was saying, yeah, this is just basically unwinnable, which I felt was good. The thing I'll say about this deck is there are some decks where you do want to play from behind or want to play from ahead. Like your rush decks, you probably want to play from ahead, and maybe there are other decks that where you want to wait for your opponent to make the first move and then retaliate, as opposed to moving out and doing your combo and then having your opponent retaliate against you. With Mimi again, I can play from ahead or behind, because I can promote a stack, do a swing, and then with my Mimi have a second stack. So if anything happens to my stack out front, I'm good. And then of course if for example they go, if they're like doing the Anubis combo, then I can just promote afterwards and then heavy Leo and take care of three of the four bodies, and then have basically board control over the battle area, and then have something in raising, whereas they have nothing. They probably used all their resources to make the combo as cheap as possible. So you know there wasn't really anything thing that I could have been matched up against where I would have said, yeah, I don't really want to see that. I guess maybe security and control, but you know, Heavyleomon can come back against security control, so you have to kill it twice. And then again, if I'm getting multiple checks off with Kokuamon, that can be hard for them to handle if they don't hit the option at the right time. So you know,
What a-
there wasn't really anything afraid of.
what about any changes? Would you make any changes to your deck now after Nats?
Uh, I'll say no because I mean I had tested this a lot and I kind again going back to one of my points, a lot of this deck is already proven theory with like the Kukulmon, the Kunamon, the Sneemon, the Tortamon. There's not a whole lot to change as a versus except for like maybe your like level sixes and then maybe what supporting level three you're pairing it with. The Quagamon was great. So there's not a lot of generic level threes that are going to support both a machine heavy Leo and then a beast animal Saber Leo. Like I was running Salamon and BT14 for my Saber Leo Dino Tiger Gacha deck, but because it's a searcher and then it gives 2K boost to both of them, whereas with this it would only give a boost to Saber. So there wasn't a good generic effect ability for my top instance is kind of split on what both of them are. So I decided to go with max security defense. It worked out. The Grand Soul worked out pretty well. I bricked a little bit more Saturday and Sunday than I had in testing. So I think that's just variance, but again, kind of like what I was saying with like the green mem boost. If you want to add a little bit more search, you can. The Grandel Souls are flexible, obviously. Typically, you don't run four Grandel Souls. Uh, if anything, you might run one or two in other traditional decks, just because you're teching in other stuff. But you know, if you want to run less removal and more search, I mean, you're certainly fine to do that. I just think that with the Kunamon and the agility training, I saw enough search. And, with the Tortamon and then even with the Quagamon, I was seeing enough DP. And even if my Heavy Leo had like Sneemon underneath instead of those two, I mean, 13K is a pretty big threshold for the main boss monster of this deck, and it has protection. So, I didn't really have a need at any point for DP. And even if they had like a bigger body, you could just digivolve it on digivolve anyway. So and get rid of it. So, DP wasn't really an issue, which is normally the inherent that you're looking for, or maybe even something like Quagamon X and Grandis for the piercing. But again, there wasn't any inherent like that that would match up well with Saber Leo and Heavy Leo for the deck. So no, there wasn't really anything that I missed with this deck that I was really saying I wish I had put that in there uh, on the weekend.
Okay. Well, I'm sure people would like to know how the deck kind of works. So, if you want
Yeah,
to hear.
so I kind of highlighted it a little bit, but typically what you'll want to do is, you'll hatch your Koromon and I'm going over again. If you're going first, Koromon for one to draw and then draw for your next turn is very useful. And just also useful because if you potentially move out first, then you're going to have free reign at their security and you're going to be able to do multiple security checks. But if you don't do that, another good opening, if you have both cards, is maybe like your Pulsemon, and then playing your Kunamon out to suspend to do a search for, your Tortamon, your level 5, maybe like an agility training or your Mimi, whatever you might need as a piece to get that going. That's where the Kukumon can come up to hurt you is if you're going first. If you have both Kunamon and the Kukumon, you obviously can't do both. But a lot of times that's not really an issue. You're either going to have that in your level 4, or you're going to be able to spend a few turns to, build up your stack and do a little bit of digging for your missing pieces. Um, but you have a few options for your opener, and then obviously the perfect stack would be your Kukumon into your Tortamon to have the Sec +1, and then also the guaranteed Gotcha. And typically for a really good board state is you'll want something like this where you have it could be whatever level 4 and your Mimi, because then what you can do is you can just promote out, and then go into your level 5, from go from 3 to 0, draw, tap Mimi, hatch an egg, you know, swing at security, and then gotcha into, let's say, your Heavyleomon. So you'll typically what you'll do is you'll swing security. If you have the Tortamon, when attacking, you'll put your level 6 on top to get plus 3k. And then you'll do your Jagmon effect to, let's just say, reveal the top 3 cards of your deck and go into the Heavyleomon for free. You'll draw for that. And then doing when Digivolving effects that you have. So in this case, Digivolve and Bomb Deck is 6k. And then I highlighted it with when talking about the Koromons, but then you can do your Koromon if you guaranteed the Gacha, where you can reveal the top card of your deck, and you can say to yourself, do I want this card? If I do, I'll keep it on top, and then Digivolve this into a Rookie and Raising and draw that card. Or if I don't want this card, then I can Bomb Deck it. And then hypothetically, end of attack, you can get the restand, and then, swing again. The Koromon isn't once per turn, it's mandatory, so you'll do another reveal and say, do I want this card now? Yes or no, and then just Bomb Deck it if you don't, or keep it on top. But yeah, that highlights what the Koromon does, and then again, with the Kukuamon, being able to do multiple checks and have Sec +1, that can get you to 4 checks, and then with Tortamon, you can be at a big DP, and then yeah, even if you don't get the 4 checks off, you're probably removing bodies and taking some security with you at the same time, and it makes it very difficult for your opponent to out this. And then, you're still at 0 from the combo I highlighted earlier. So then maybe you can go into like a Pulsemon, for example, and even something like a Sneemon just to pass turn. And then hypothetically, if the next turn comes around, you can promote, tap another Mimi, hatch another egg, and then you know what this came up in a few games where they haven't outed the stack with the Tortamon, and then you can just go into your level 5 draw, and then you can just hypothetically swing with the stack with the Tortamon, put the Heavy Leo on top of your deck, you know do whatever you want with the Koromon, and potentially restand if there's still nothing, but then go with the Jagamon and then guarantee the gotcha with the when attacking, even though you don't have the Koromon in stack, but you're able to guarantee the level 6 again. Go into the Heavy Leo, and then when Digivolving that unsuspends, and then you currently, potentially, if you hadn't had to burn the end of attack with Bomb Decking at 4k, then you have basically 4 swings that turn, and you just promoted this stack last turn and just this stack this turn, you're already swinging for, you're already swinging for 4 times with the deck, and one of them has Sec +1. And then, of course, you can just, start going into another stack. So even if they potentially, out one of these stacks or both of these stacks, then the next turn you promote this stack and do the same thing. And then you tap Mimi, hatch another egg, and keep going. And it's just really hard for them to answer that each turn, especially since they're not bringing stuff out of raising to handle, what you're dealing with. So they either have to use what they already promoted or something in hand, which might not be useful against something like Heavy Leo with Fortitude. And even if they do use it, then they've lost their resources to handle whatever you promote the next turn. So you know that's kind of the strategy of the deck. You're trying to play fast with your Mimi to bring out a stack each turn to gotcha out, and put pressure on your opponent with your Heavy Leo and Saber, depending on what your matchup is. But again, promoting a stack each turn and getting into a level 6 is pretty oppressive. I think there are games where I've done 3 or 4 level 6s in a row, and at that point they just run out of gas and they can't stop you.
I mean, going into a level 6 for free and having enough memory to be able to immediately go back into a level 6 for free the next turn. It's pretty good.
Yeah, I think there were games I didn't play against Mirage, but there were even some games where I'd got into Heavy Leo and have like be able to get a Toromon stack of racing, and I would just hit like Full Moon Blaster and bounce the Heavy Leo back to hand, and I'm just like, okay, it's just coming back next turn anyway because I'm gonna go into my 5 and gotcha into it and then tap me and go into a different make it start making a different stack and just throw out the Heavy Leo again. So
Well, Ryan, I can't thank you enough for doing this deck profile with us. Congratulations on your top 64. It is a hard fought victory with 2 days of Digimon to go, but congratulations.
yep, and I appreciate everyone that has reached out for the deck list and has had questions about it. I always tell people, try playing non-meta decks every once in a while at the locals. And this is my favorite one, and it holds its own against, a lot of the top tier decks, regardless of what you're seeing. So I always tell people to, give this deck a try, have fun with it. I think it's very fun, and don't necessarily customize. Don't necessarily just take my list and run it. I customized it for what I was expecting at Nats. You can change up your top end and maybe what you want to use as your options for whatever you're seeing at locals and what you want to try and accomplish. So I do recommend giving it a try, though. It's very fun to play.
After I saw the reaction from some people, and I do not think that's going to be a problem. I know
Yep.
people are going to be very excited for this. You got kind of a cult following happening right now, so I'm sure we are going to see that from time to time going forward.
I would love it.
Well, thank you again for your time, and we'll see you all later.
Yep, thanks.